Um, Good morning, everyone, and thanks, Jackie. Um, Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, I'd like to extend particular welcome to our colleagues in the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, colleagues in Board BIA, Enterprise Ireland, and I see we have colleagues here that joined us from AFBI in Northern Ireland. You're all very welcome to the Aviva here this morning. I guess it's an ironic location for the exploration of potential collaborations, given the scenes of so many competitive jousts in soccer and rugby over the years. On behalf of Teagasc, which is the Irish Agriculture and Food Development Authority, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all of you here this morning. As Jackie says, this is the first ever Ireland-UK Innovation Summit, so it's truly a historic occasion. And I'm particularly pleased to welcome so many guests here from UK research institutions, universities, and especially from UK food companies. It's a unique occasion in the history of the economic ties that bind our two islands, and that in that we have brought together leading UK and Irish food company executives and retailers, along with policymakers, research managers, and those involved in third-level education, to debate the key challenges and opportunities for innovation that exist across both islands for all segments of the food value chain. And indeed, I think it's important that we situate this event in a wider European context, in the hope that we can create a strong platform for innovation that will be of mutual benefit to both Irish and UK companies. The economic relationships between Ireland and the UK are deep-rooted, as you all know. 40% of total Irish exports are consumed in the British market, making it by far our largest single trading partner. We are the fifth largest market for British exports, and Britain indeed does more trade with Ireland than with Russia, China, India, and Brazil combined. So we have a mutual interest in trade. This event is a positive step towards building on these ties and furthering the commitments that were set out in March of 2012 by An Taoiseach Enda Kenny and Prime Minister David Cameron. In particular, the Prime Minister and Taoiseach committed themselves to working to boost competitiveness and productivity, and through the support of for innovation, research and development, that would involve greater collaboration between our third-level colleges, our research institutes, and, of course, our business sectors. I don't need to tell any of you involved in the food company that we face both tremendous opportunities in the sector, but also serious challenges with the emergence of increased uncertainty in global food and commodity markets. And I think, mindful of this, the two leaders specifically identified the considerable potential for collaborative endeavours that lay in our agri-food sector. The food and drink industry underpin, therefore, the relationship, and it's fitting that the first summit should address the issues in this sector. Last year, 42% of Irish food and drink exports, worth nearly €4 billion, were consumed in Britain. The UK market indeed accounted for over 52% of total Irish beef exports and 36% of Irish dairy exports and ingredients. At the same time, the value of food exports from the UK to Ireland is close to €2 billion per annum. Irish and British farmers produce food to the highest standards in the world for one of the most demanding consumer bases. Both food industries operate to the same strict EU standards, very demanding environmental regulations, and of course we operate within the same climatic conditions, as was very evident in recent times. But perhaps more importantly, there is great synergy in the sectors. In particular, production costs are closely aligned in Ireland and in the UK, dairy and beef systems. So the agri-food sector is Ireland's, indeed, largest indigenous industry. Its annual turnover is close to 22 billion. Exports are worth over 9 billion per annum. And we estimate about 135,000 people are gainfully employed in the sector. In the UK, the farming and food and drink sector account for about 3.5 million jobs and about 7% of the overall UK economy. Therefore, it's not surprising that both sectors and both countries share a common objective of making the sectors more competitive, productive, and sustainable all along the value chain. We simply need to get better at producing food in efficient ways. Farmers, manufacturers, retailers, consumers, all of course have a part to play in reducing waste and in using resources efficiently. We are very conscious also of the need to prevent the pressure that we're putting on our resources, our land, our water, our soils, through climate change, which can damage the environment. And of course, food safety and security are set to become even bigger issues at a global level. There is a large number of small and medium-sized enterprises in this sector. And they are trying to break into new export markets, and they require support in that endeavour. Success is, of course, critically dependent, and this is the theme of this conference, on the ability to innovate in response to changes in global demographics and health trends. And this relies very much on having a high skills base in science and engineering that is responsive and driven by the needs of industry. And those of us that work in the knowledge providing sectors, if you like, the universities and research institutions, we have an equal requirement to be innovative and above all to be responsive to the needs of industry. I'd like to say a little bit about the role of Teagasc, which, as I say, is Ireland's Agriculture and Food Development Authority. We are unusual in a European context, or probably in a global context, in that we work all along in supporting science-based innovation. We work all along the value chain from farmer to fork. But in the processing sector in particular, we have pilot plants at our sites at Moorpark in County Cork, which focuses on the dairy industry, and at Ashtown in Dublin, which concentrates on the meat sector. And we believe these pilot plants provide an important anchor in the whole innovation process. In these pilot plants, industry projects are given a practical focus. They allow process scale-up to test feasibility and to look at the application and use of products in a real-world context. Our experience has been that a successful outcome from the pilot plant greatly enhances the likelihood of market take-up. We work very closely with smaller companies, in particular through our Food SME Technology Support Programme. This operates in partnership with Enterprise Ireland and is staffed by technologists whose role is to accumulate and transfer information that is directly applicable to the needs of food companies. The role of Enterprise Ireland is critical here in that it allows us to identify high potential innovation companies that would be best positioned to benefit from the kind of technological support that an institute like ours and other institutes can provide. And that enables us to focus our scarce resources more effectively. Recently, this model of support for SME companies in the agri-food sector has been further defined and developed through the establishment of a very innovative program that you might want to hear more about later, particularly our guests, called the FoodWorks Programme. This is a joint initiative between ourselves, Board BIA, the Irish Food Marketing Board, Enterprise Ireland, and the aim is very simple. It's to grow the export potential of small food companies. We also have ambitions, particularly at our site in Fermoy in County Cork, to bring all of the elements that constitute innovation, and indeed a theme of today's event will be the development of the knowledge innovation triangle, the integrated combination of research, education, and business, because it is that in that interplay that innovation will be sparked. So we plan to develop a food hub, or a food valley, if you will, which will bring together on one site the hardware in terms of pilot plant, equipment, the infrastructure in terms of incubation centers targeted to the specific needs of food companies themselves, and of course the critical, important software in the form of expertise from our research personnel. We hope that this hub will provide the innovative environment needed for SMEs in particular to get established on a sound technological basis. Our experience in Teagasc in working with industry has convinced us that there are several routes that have to be exploited and employed in successfully supporting the transfer of knowledge to food companies. Licensing of technologies, which is often the primary source to supporting companies, is certainly one route, but in our view, it's only one route. We believe you need to have a suite of supports for industry that can be adapted to the specific needs of industries and indeed of companies. And one very interesting trend that is developing in our interrelationship with companies is that we need to try and put together, and I think this will be a theme for our collaboration with the companies and research institutes in the United Kingdom, we need to try to build the innovation pipeline through the vehicle of public-private partnerships. We're increasingly, I'm glad to say, in Teagasc, working with companies rather than working for companies. And what that basically means is we want to establish a strong, sustainable, long-term working relationship with companies. And what that involves in practical terms is that very often companies will locate on-site, working in collaborative projects with our research colleagues. And of course, we have developed a whole infrastructure around maintaining the critical confidentiality that's needed in such relationships. But this does allow companies not only to get benefit from the specific project, but also to benefit from the environment of innovation that's created in such a working arrangement. It's critically important that we develop this innovation pipeline. Both in a backward sense, we are an applied research institute. We need to work in developing linkages to universities, but we also need to work forward, critically, to develop linkages with food companies. There are substantial taxpayer funds invested in research and development in both Ireland and the UK. And is it imperative that we in the knowledge providing sector ensure that those taxpayer resources, those scarce resources, are leveraged to the maximum for the benefit of companies. Companies provide a critical insight into market need, which is the bedrock of all innovation. Knowledge providers in the universities and in research institutes like ourselves, we lack that insight. We depend on the knowledge that companies provide to enable us to respond. And when that relationship works well, it can be very, very productive indeed. Okay, finally, I want to say this is all about developing international partnerships, and that's what today is about. We aim throughout the day to demonstrate in very practical ways how we can support building an effective business innovation system that links the key pillars of business, educationalists in our third level institutions, and research institutes. And my hope at the end of today is that we will see the emergence of practical steps, practical next steps that will enable us to further the innovation process in our two countries. I would like to finally thank a few people that have put in Trojan work to bring about today's event. We have had tremendous support from the two ministers that will talk to you later on and their respective departments. I want to, of course, acknowledge the contribution of our colleagues in the Institute for Food Research, and David Boxer in particular. I want to acknowledge the role of the British Embassy, Simon McKeever, and also Owen Tong, the Director of the British Ireland Chamber of Commerce. And as I said, our own department and indeed DEFRA have been hugely supportive. Finally, I want to acknowledge Declan Troy's input. Declan's a very modest individual. Many of you will know him. He likes to stay in the background sometimes, but really, Declan has been the brainchild of today's event. So look, I'm looking forward immensely to the keynote addresses later on today and the deliberations in the various workshops. So thank you and have a very productive and innovative day here.